Las Vegas seems to be one of the biggest leisure locations to visit. It's also one of many cities that has a bit of history behind it. In particular, the Mob Museum in downtown. It's a very interactive exhibit that opened in 2012. It spreads 41,000 square feet and contains 3 floors of full details and insights of the real life battles between the mob and law enforcement throughout the years. You walk into an elevator to start your tour, and you're read your Miranda rights as seen on screen.
It's in a court of law. You have the right to speak to an attorney. You cannot afford it.
Enlightened for the opportunity to accompany Ms. Misha Ray, the digital marketing manager, to learn more about this historic transformation.
Here at the museum, we expect people to be very interactive. The museum is very experiential. So what you do is you start on the 3rd floor, and then it chronologically works its way down. So from the immigration of various cultures into the U.S., and then kind of the creation of various kind of segments of culture. So, you know, the Irish, the Italians, et cetera, et cetera. And then from Prohibition, which is where organized crime really got its start. So the creation of Prohibition really gave an opportunity to people like Al Capone to kind of create these illicit markets for black market goods, alcohol specifically in Prohibition. And then from there on out, you move through the various other rackets that come around, sports betting, the race wire, etc. And then you move on to our 2nd floor, and our building is a historic building, and on our 2nd floor is our courtroom, which was restored from its original form. And in 1950, that courtroom hosted a Kefauver Senate hearing, and those hearings were some of the first televised hearings around the country. So it really kind of brought about the televised experience for people in the U.S. to see what was going on in our government system. So Senator Estes Kefauver from Tennessee, he's kind of credited with exposing the mob in America. So in 1950, November 15th, 1950 to be exact, a Senator Kefauver hearing was held here in our courtroom. So you sit in our courtroom and you watch this big production. It's one of the best experiences, in my opinion, in the museum. About an 8-minute video that takes place over 3 screens. Very, very cool to experience. Police lights are going on above you. It's very, very, makes you feel like you're there. And then you walk into kind of old Las Vegas. So it's what we call Open City. And you see some Frank Sinatra style Las Vegas, and you see some slot cheating and how the mob kind of started the scam in Las Vegas. And then from there you get into the more political aspects of the mob. So JFK and his connections to the mob and the potential that the mob had a hand in his assassination. And then you end on our 3rd floor, which is where I'm standing right now. So then you get to listen to some actual wiretaps. You put on a headset, hear some wiretaps that the FBI illicitly obtained from people like John Gotti. You then get to sit inside of a wooden crate that the FBI, it's kind of a model of what the FBI would have used to kind of observe these, goings on of the mob without them knowing. So it would sit across the street, this crate, this kind of boring looking shipping crate would sit across the street from a location, say from a phone bank, where the FBI knew that someone was going to go and make some kind of deal. So they could take pictures, they could listen in while sitting in this crate. So you can sit inside of our own crate. It just kind of expands the experience. And then you go and you can do our gun simulation, you can do things like our touch screens, and then keep watching videos throughout the whole experience. So really, people when they're in the museum, they should be feeling like they're learning things, but also having fun while doing it. So our building was built in 1933 as a U.S. post office and federal courthouse. So how it came about is former Mayor Oscar Goodman was a mob attorney, or he was an attorney for some alleged mob members like Lefty Rosenthal, Tony Spilotro, those kind of guys. And this building became available around 2002. They were moving out, they had outgrown it, and former Mayor Oscar Goodman decided that this would be a great opportunity to create a mob museum, or a museum about law enforcement and the mob. So essentially what happens is when you're in the museum, you see the start of organized crime, and then you see its downfall as you start to come down the floors. So it's at its peak when you're on the top floor of our museum, and then the 2nd floor you start to see it kind of starts to come apart, and then on the 3rd floor it's completely, FBI has really gotten on top of it and has really found ways to get around it. So in creating this building from a federal post office and courthouse, as I mentioned before, our courthouse is historic, and our building is on the National Register of Historic Places. So the way the building was restored It was very intentional and very beautifully done. A lot of the original features, like in our lobby, you'll see some of the original P.O. boxes that are brass and beautiful. Some of my favorite features in the building are those post office boxes, original to the building. In our courtroom, you'll see some of the original features, like the crown molding around the top, that have been beautifully restored, repainted, kept in some pristine condition. So I think to have turned this building from a courthouse into a museum, really, it just worked out so well, and the vision really came together, and it makes sense because of the history that our courtroom has, turning the building into a complete museum about law enforcement and organized crime. It just fit. It was just a great inspiration. I have personally never had any experiences with ghosts or any kind of haunted stories in the museum, though there are a lot of people here who stay late or are here after all the guests leave, and they're here by themselves, who think that they have seen things or they hear things when nobody else is in the building, like shadows of non-existent people coming across a garbage can lid, because our garbage cans are reflective, they're brass. So some people see the outline of a person, the shape of that person walking by, and that person isn't there. But I have not personally experienced anything like that, though I have been here some late nights, but I've always been with other people. So nothing like that, but I think there's one of our biggest artifacts is on our 3rd floor, and that's the St. Valentine's Day Massacre wall. And we have had TV shows come here in the past and take their kind of ghost hunting machinery and scan it over the wall to try to capture any spirits or anything lingering around there. And they have analyzed that footage and those sound waves and that kind of thing, and they think that they've captured the voices of the men who were murdered against that wall. That they think that the spirits were captured in the bricks. But that's, that's up to the person to decide if they believe that, and certainly a lot of people do, and I can understand why, but I have not had any of those experiences. So Mobot is a brand new experience. It's launching on April 1st. We're currently in the testing phase of it. We're conducting a lot of tests with various people around the country to see how it works on their end. So what Mobot is a robot that stands about this tall, stands about to my chest. And what you do is you are at home, or you're in the classroom, or you're in your hospital bed, and you connect via your laptop that has a webcam. You can log in to our Mobot with a special access code, and then from there you take a private virtual tour of the Mob Museum. And there are some instances like homebound people or hospital-bound people who can do this, and they can experience the museum in a way that they otherwise would not have been able to do so. So if they can't actually make it to the museum in person, you can literally access the museum at the touch of a laptop. So you just log in, and then you can drive your way around with a guided, one of our educators. They can give you a guided tour of the museum. So it's a really special experience that I think is going to be a really positive thing for people around the country, people around the world who really want to come to our museum but aren't able to do so for a variety of reasons. So it's going to be a big project for schools. They can take virtual tours. And again, as I said, homebound people, hospital-bound people, or just international audiences that aren't coming to Las Vegas anytime soon, but would love to learn about the history of Prohibition, of the mob, of law enforcement. So it's a really great opportunity for everybody to take advantage of. Mobot is the clever name we've given our own robot. Beam is the creator of this robotic system. It's Beam Robotics or something along those lines. And several museums around the world have these beams, but they use them for different reasons. We just decided that it would be a great thing to solely use for virtual tours. So the idea came about when someone in our department, in our marketing department, Brenda Hengel, a wonderful lady, she found this robot system and kind of came up with the idea that we should bring it to our museum. So that's what we've been doing for the last several months. We've been testing it, we've been coming up with the tech specifications for it, and just finding out a way that we can use it within our own museum. So there are a lot of different ways to use these kinds of things. Somewhere in Australia has created their own beam system for use in their space system within their government's NASA, their version of NASA. So it's very interesting, lots of different ways a lot of museums are using it. This is just the way we're using it, and it's very exciting.